Organic click-through rates on Google have dropped up to 61%, and not because your rankings have dropped. In fact, for most of you, your rankings have probably gone up. This is something different, and if you haven't adjusted your SEO strategy yet, you're already behind. SEO Interactive did an analysis of 25 million impressions and came back with a 61% drop in click-through rates. It's safe to say that Google AI overviews, since they've been introduced, have made a significant impact in what's happening in the SEO world. So we really need to have a look at this in greater detail and work out what we need to be doing going forward in order to combat or in some way offset this reduction in click-through. You're more than likely already aware of Google AI overviews by this point. You can see as well, it's had a lot of media coverage. There's one in particular that I really liked, which was that this tech site reported that Google continues to deny this. Very interestingly, once we actually go through and Google this on the AI overviews, you can clearly see that even Google AI Overview agrees that this has had an impact on traffic dropping, especially on click-through rates. Since they've introduced these AI Overviews, it appears that they're coming up in position 0 in almost all cases. In some rare cases, I've seen the paid ads section coming up higher. However, in most cases, yeah, you're seeing this as the first answer to almost any query now coming up. The latest study I found showed that 13% of all Google queries now show an AI Overview. However, just from my own experience, I'm finding that seems to be way more the case than not now at this stage. In summary, what's commonly coming up at the moment and is being reported to us from a lot of our clients and that we're seeing is that impressions generally are up, but clicks are down. So these are in the good cases. So generally what we're seeing is the number of appearances that our clients are getting, if they are increasing, their rankings have improved, is going up. But conversely to that, we're seeing that generally the click-through rates on especially informational content is dropping significantly. So you can see here's like a sort of typical example of what we've seen quite commonly over the last sort of 6 months. What we're seeing quite commonly now, this graph demonstrates nicely, is that impressions in a lot of cases when we're doing good SEO work is increasing. However, we're not seeing the click-through rates we once saw because of these AI overviews. Obviously taking that info and plastering that into the AI overview, it's obviously reducing the click-through rates and the need for people to click through onto a website. The studies and information out there at the moment are showing that even the big giants are really bleeding traffic at the moment. You can see here we've got examples like HubSpot, Business Insider, Forbes, Huffington Post, CNN, all seeing significant traffic drops as a result. So these aren't small websites, of course. These are all massive giants out there for blogs, and they're feeling the heat. So you can assume that pretty much across the board people are going to be experiencing this. So who's losing and who's winning out of this at the moment? Generally speaking, what I'm seeing as a whole is that if the query is informational in its nature, then there's going to be a significant reduction in the number of people clicking through. The AI overview will give some sort of clear answer to most informational queries. Where you may still get click-throughs is if the informational content requires some more in-depth research. So the overviews are limited amount of space that they're taking up. So in some cases, it may well be that the user will want to click through and obviously find out a lot more about it. So if you've got something that's a much more in-depth topic where a summary probably won't cut it, in a lot of cases, they still are working well, but general best of lists, news summaries, so things like complete summaries and definition and explainer posts, how-to tutorial content, these are examples where we're really seeing reductions in click-through rates. Some of the low-risk stuff that can't be replaced with AI, so service and product pages. We do see some cases where that's been affected, but there's a much smaller reduction on that. Makes sense if you think about it. If someone's specifically looking for a service or a product, they're far more likely to end up clicking through and going onto a website, as of course they'll need to do so in order to take up that service or purchase that product. Original research and data we're seeing is performing very well as well. So again, if you've got something that's a bit more in depth that can provide an entire study, Google's only likely on the AI overviews to just cite that rather than obviously divulge the whole thing. Case studies and results, again, this one's been something that we've been, putting forward to a lot of our clients for a long time here now. Case studies and showing results are something, again, that somebody who's looking for a bit more insight into the what's and the whys of something is going to be far more likely to click through and get a bit more info on that particular subject. And then buying comparison pages, again, we've seen a slight reduction in the studies we've looked at. Makes sense again. Like if somebody's looking to compare two products, Google AI reviews could give some limited info on what that comparison is. But again, if someone's doing thorough research, they're more likely to click through and obviously look at that product in a bit more detail. The real winner at the moment, I think in SEO in general, and especially the AI, seems to be Reddit. Reddit seems to be getting cited very heavily by AI, and Google seem to have loved that prior to the AI reviews coming about. So we've seen a 450% AI citations increase, which is equal to 1.4 billion monthly visits. So Reddit are the real winners here at the moment from AI. It's pulling a lot of info from there, and that is one tactic that you can start looking to employ in your business, your agency, or for your clients. That we're looking at that's particularly strong at the moment. The major shift that we need to be looking at is that being cited within the AI overviews is now the new number one spot. So getting into an overview doesn't just give you a link, essentially. It dramatically amplifies everything. It gives a significant boost to your branding of your business. And that's really the key piece to remember here, I think. Rather than just thinking about purely on click-through, if somebody's searching for some info that could lead to your product, if you're cited by the AI tool as being the best of X, Y, and Z, then that's going to be far more likely that person's then going to look you up. Even if they don't click your link, they may well search your brand after that, which can increase. So you're increasing brand reach, not just trying to get clicks at this stage. So look, breaking that down, what happens when you get cited in AI overviews? Your site's going to be ranking in the top 10. So your traditional link building, content strategy, and on-page SEO gets you there, and it is a prerequisite for this. We're finding that it makes sense if you think about it, that the AI is looking for trusted sources for that info, and obviously you having a fully decked out website that's well optimized in the usual form that we do with SEO is going to play an important role. Google AI selects you as a trusted source. So eat signals, original content, and brand authority, again, seem to be the drivers that are getting people cited more often than not. So the usual pieces that we would apply in a solid SEO campaign seem to be working well for us here as well. So in that sense, we're looking not just at who's ranking highest, but making sure those checkpoint lists are all covered off at all times in order to make sure we've got the best chance of appearing in a Google AI overview. The studies that we found showed that organic clicks are jumping up to 35%. So if you're being named as a source inside an AI overview, it's driving significantly more clicks than the organic listing alone. So like I said, a lot of the time that may lead them to then search for your brand name as a follow-up. So it may not directly correlate to a click immediately through that link, but it may well cause them to then search you on Google and find out your brand and go through that channel. Paid clicks appear to be spiking even harder as well, so brand recognition from AI overview citations drives a massive uplift in branded search and ad performance too. So again, it's another reason just to summarize why it's so important that we're applying this when we're working on a site. So here's 5 tips that you can apply immediately into your SEO strategy to help with the AI side. Number 1 is optimize for citations, not just rankings. So we no longer want to be focused purely on position 1. We want to focus on getting the LLMs and AI overviews to trust us enough to quote us. So eat signals, author bios, and original data are your new ranking factors. This was already important previously, however, this has become only more important since the introduction of LLMs and AI overviews. We really want to be focusing away from informational content when we're trying to rank and more focus on commercial and transactional keywords. So things like best product for XYZ, as an example, would be a main focus if we're trying to rank within the AI overviews. We want to be appearing there for buyer intent queries because they're far less likely to be affected by this reduction in click-through rates. If somebody's searching for a product or a service, as I mentioned earlier, they're far more likely to click through and look at your website because their ultimate goal is to actually purchase a product or a service. If you are going down the route of informational content, we want to create content that's hard for AI to summarize or impossible for it to summarize. So providing original research, proprietary data, real case studies, unique opinions. If an AI can answer the question without sending traffic your way, it will. So you need to give people a reason to click. So coming up with ideas and concepts within the case study, for example, that could draw people in is going to make it far more likely that someone's going to then click through to you and actually review the information you're providing. We want to build brand authority beyond Google. This was something that really started before the LLMs and AI overviews took place. There was some Google algorithm updates that we noticed were impacting this significantly prior to the launch of AI overview, and it made sense once that launched why this then took effect. You really want to make sure you're spreading your brand as much as you can out there. You can think of things like YouTube, email, social media, podcasts. So getting clicks from other areas and brand awareness is going to help drive this. So this is something that's been talked about for quite a while in SEO now, but it's become even more important, it appears, from the introduction of AI overviews. We need to be looking at new KPIs rather than the focus on purely traffic at this point. If somebody's being cited in an AI overview and then goes to then search that brand after seeing a result there, it's a bit tougher to track than the usual traditional methods we've used in SEO. So what we're doing in response to that is we want to be looking at things like brand searches through things like your Google Analytics and Google Search Console accounts are going to be much more realistic in searching that. So we would expect, because of if you've got a good coverage within AI overviews, that your brand searches would increase as a result of that. You can also, there are tools that are starting to allow us to track how often you're being cited within AI overviews. So that again will become a more important, I think, qualification on how you're performing within Google. There's three main ways that have changed with link building that's become even more important. The playbook hasn't necessarily been torn up. However, the really big players from things like digital PR, earning good citations are still very valuable here. One of the biggest wins that we found recently that I'll cover off in another video in more depth is brand mentions or listicle style articles. We're seeing these are being picked up very heavily and relied on very heavily by the LLMs and Google AI Overview. So getting mentions in big publications where you can, like TechCrunch and Forbes, that have always been popular anyway, is again still seems to be playing a massive part in getting cited for AI. The other way in which we're doing it is, like I said, these listicle style articles, essentially where we create a guest post style article, but we're citing a particular style of review in that article, and we're using that across multiple sources. So we'll build multiple locations in different websites as something similar to then get cited. If the LLMs or AI doesn't have an answer for what it is that you're searching for, it will look at the internet in order to try and find the answer to that. So it's looking at sources like Reddit. It will look at blogs as well, and if there's articles that are reviewing a certain aspect of our product and that's been picked up, then that will be cited. So that's another way that we're finding is working very well in order to get citations within Google AI overviews. I'll cover that off in more detail in another video. So just to recap, traffic is down right now, but AI citations and LLMs are here to stay, and we're having to adapt as best we can in order to combat that. It's looking like bottom of the funnel works best right now, so focusing on service pages, product pages seems to be king at the moment, and just really trying to build your brand in order to get the most exposure you can. Next week, I'll be showing you exactly how to get your brand cited on AI overviews and what steps we're using to get the best success in doing so. If you found the video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments down below, have you been affected by AI and what have you been doing in order to try and combat that recently? Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.